Here we go. I think we're live. Hi, everybody. This is Greg with Dice Must Flow, and welcome to my first live stream. And I have a special guest with me today, Chris Reynolds, from the designer of the Armoured Digital miniature Kickstarter. Welcome, Chris.
Nice to be here.
As you may notice, Chris has got a bit of an accent compared to me. So we're doing this in the morning. Thanks for staying up late to accommodate our time differences.
Everyone tells me I have an accent, but I can't hear it. I'm fairly sure you guys are the ones with the accents. So.
Right, we have the American accent. So, Chris, I know that Armoured Digital is something you've been working on for quite a while. It was something that I had seen a couple years ago, and now it's finally here.
Yeah. Well, we've been in development for the last about 18 months or so. For the last 12 months, we've been essentially rules more or less as they've been now have been in place, and we've just spent the last 12 months or so play testing just to make sure we get all that fine balance in place and correct, so that people don't end up at release going, hey, this unit's overpowered or this one's underpowered, etc.
Cool. I was going to go ahead and try and share a picture in my screen here. I guess my entire screen. How about that? We'll just share that screen. And so, yeah, you can see a picture of the Armoured Digital tanks skirmishing. Pardon me?
Sorry, that's our box art, yeah.
Yeah. And so one of the things that really appealed to me on this was that it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Command and Conquer in miniature form.
We've heard that a few times, yeah. And certainly games like Total Annihilation and Supreme Commander are very strong influences for the background and setting for this game.
Okay, so I guess why don't you? One thing is, I guess, the scale. What, 15 millimeter?
Yeah, so 1:100 or 15 mil. Because this is essentially a tank skirmish game. If we were playing an infantry skirmish game, an individual 28 mil infantryman is about the same sort of size and heft as one of our 15 mil tanks. So we wanted to have a fairly similar sort of play experience that way. Plus, people have enjoyed sci-fi war games in smaller scales. So, we're talking about things like Hawk war games with Drop Zone Commander and Spartan when they had Halo Ground Commander come out, those sorts of things. People are enjoying those sort of smaller scales for sci-fi.
Right, and I have a lot of listeners that play All Quiet on the Martian Front. It's one of the things that I cover, and it's kind of HO 18 millimeter. I'm not I'll grab a tank, but it's like tanks versus Martian tripods, and so you can kind of see that's one of their tanks. And I think that people can easily see maybe your stuff could fit into that world as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, as much as our scale is sci-fi. As much as our scale is 15 mil 1:100, it is all of our tanks are much smaller than they would be if you compare them to, say, Battlefront's M1 Abrams, so a modern main battle tank in the same scale. Our tanks look much smaller because obviously they're drones, they're unmanned, there's no need to have space inside them for crew. So therefore, if you're playing a 10 mil or 12 mil game, you could easily take one of these tanks as a main battle tank sized vehicle or a heavy tank. And equally, they can slot into to larger scale games of sort of HO scale, 1:87 thereabouts. They can happily sort of fit into those if you're happy with a what might appear to be a slightly smaller scale vehicle, similar to, say, the Russian Uran 9 drone at the moment.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up another picture here that I had of one of the tanks. So I guess, can you just tell me a little bit about the game? I know that at least I know I'm a backer on the Kickstarter. I guess how it plays, go through the movement or whatever you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, sure. So the game is based around drone tanks. It is a game where you've got one human being as in your entire force. Everything else is a drone they control neurally. So they're linked in with a specific set of equipment that allows them to send orders programs to their drones and then guide them through those particular orders. So the way the game works is you've got maybe half a dozen tanks on your side. One's a command vehicle. You'll have somewhere between 2 and 5 combat tanks. And then if you're playing the full game, you'll then have a logistics train with a construction facility, which is usually a mobile factory, and 1 or 2 logistics units, usually transport tanks, to go and grab resources. So when you're playing through the basic game, it's all about alternating activations with orders. Unlike other games where you might have everybody move and then shoot, or you might have action points, so every time you activate a unit, it can go and do X or Y. Instead, what you do is you draw a set of cards that you hold in your hand at the start of the turn. And then each of those cards simply tell you what you can do. So if you want to move a unit, you simply pull out a move card, you play that on one of your drones, and then you go through the rules for how to move a unit. If you want to shoot an enemy, you simply play a shoot card and go through the same thing. Those are the very basic cards, but then it goes into a whole lot of different variations. So instead of playing a move, for example, you could play a red line, which increases your movement, but has a risk that it might burn out your engine somewhat. Or you could play assault, which moves you much slower, but you also get a reduced firepower attack during that movement. So a lot of sort of swings and roundabouts as to which order you want to choose to play on which drone at which time.
Yeah, so can you go into shooting a little bit? How you how the interaction of to hit and doing damages?
Yeah, sure. So it's a fairly basic process. We use true line of sight. You can pre-measure any time, those sort of things. When you're shooting, each vehicle has a firepower rating. So, for example, this little fella here, I'll hold him up nice and close, the Elephant artillery tank with a big Gatling cannon on the front there. Please excuse the 3D printed prototype. Ours will be cast in resin for the final product. But he's got a firepower of 4, which means that on a typical attack, he's going to roll 4 dice to hit. Normally, he'll need a 4+ to hit if it's a straight target in the open, but then you can modify it either by getting into cover or moving at least 8 inches during the turn. You can also modify it if you're attempting to hit them, if the target's fired during the turn, or if you're able to get what we call a sensor lock, which is where you get within the range of your sensors to get a solid lock on the target. You can modify the chances to hit up or down that way. Some of the cards will even modify your chances as well. So if you choose rapid fire, it'll increase your firepower by 1. It'll also reduce your chance to hit by 1. And likewise, but the other way around would say precision fire.
Interesting. I did notice you said about the movement. That's something that a lot of games, it seems like, have gone away from, and I really like it. I'm an old BattleTech player, and so the fact that moving, shooting at a moving target is going to be more difficult than one sitting still. So that was one of the things that appealed to me when I was watching your videos about the game before the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So
and it is sorry, one other thing on the shooting just before I get past that. There is sort of a scissors, paper, rock attack and defense system as well. So once you've determined how many times you've hit your target, if you've hit them with the right sort of weapon versus the right defensive systems, you can actually have a better or worse chance at actually penetrating that vehicle's armor. So, for example, the elephant that I showed you here has an explosive weapon and hardened armor. So if you have an elephant shooting another elephant, they're going to be able to save fairly easily against those attacks. But if instead you have, say, this little guy here, so the rhino, which has a projectile weapon firing against the hardened armor here, it's going to penetrate it fairly well. And yeah, it's a scissors, paper, rock sort of system with the 3 different tanks we've got in the basic set. You'll find that most tanks will be able to defend against their own weapon system fairly easily, which means that it'll encourage a bit of diversity on the table.
So do you just set up the game? Do each of these tanks cost points? Is it scenarios? Is it objective based? A little bit of both?
So the basic game that we're putting out at the moment, it's simply a best 2 out of 3 for the victory conditions, which means you're attempting to control ground, number of kills, and the number of times you've been able to destroy the enemy's command vehicle. When you destroy the enemy's command vehicle, the commander actually gets ejected out the top hatch. So if you're playing a full game, you get to try and build a new command vehicle or steal the enemy's one, and then come back and command your forces again. So if you're familiar with BattleTech, it's sort of like that, except the ejected pilots are still trying to get into the fight and still command things. As to points values, this game actually doesn't have any points values. Instead, we simply have all of our units balanced on the same power level. So even though some will have better stats in certain areas and worse in others, all of them come out to about the same power level, but different roles in the battlefield.
Interesting. So I'm going to try and share the Kickstarter page here. And so we can see that. And so I guess kind of maybe talk through what we all get in the Kickstarter. It looks like it's a pretty good value to me, but
yeah. So what we have here, this is the core box set. So this allows you to play a basic game with 2 players. So you'll notice there are 4 tanks there. I've shown you briefly the elephant and the rhino. You also get a wolf, so that's the other part of the trio of the basic tanks, as well as a centaur command vehicle. So this allows you to get out there and start slugging out with another player quite happily, or if you want to, you can keep all of the vehicles for yourself. There's no faction-specific units in this game, so you can happily use them with any faction you have. Along with the tanks, you get your standard orders deck there, as well as all of your dice and tokens, your rulebook, and all of the stat cards you need in order to play. We've also unlocked, due to the stretch goals, we've hit our first 3 stretch goals already. So you'll notice just down here, there's one of the Wombat mobile factories added to all of the different pledges, as well as the Sector Commander pledge, and above there's the Extractor Automated Mine. So this is bringing in the full game with the whole logistics train and lots of stuff behind it as well.
Okay, and so the Extractor, that is the thing that is gonna, the mobile factory is what's you're gonna use to regenerate your guys.
Yep.
But the Extractor, what does that do?
So essentially, this is a piece of terrain that sits in the very center of the table, and it's sort of the focal point that you're fighting around. And that's essentially like the tip of the iceberg, if you will, of the automated mine that sits below it. So both players are trying to get to that mine, grab the resources, bring them back to their Wombat mobile factory, and build new units using those resources.
All right, so here's a couple examples of the movement cards that you guys have, or the command card you have.
Exactly. So the one on the left there, the move card, obviously it simply says execute a move action. And I like to say there's 3 things you need to know how to play. One's how to move, the other's how to shoot, and then the turn sequence. And moving is a fairly simple process. Once you play a move card, you then just carry out the actions as per the rules. And you'll notice that there's a video up there that goes through in 5 minutes how to move your units.
Right.
And here we've got just the other orders cards there. It's just showing shoot, precision fire, and rapid fire. So it's just showing you the variations on different shoot orders.
Nice. So I was going to scroll through. We got the pictures of some of the tanks here. And I guess one of the things I was going to go back to, you do have the videos here that you were talking about how to move, how to shoot, and play. What terrain are you using in this video? I was just kind of curious. It was something I haven't seen before. Or are you guys going to look at doing any terrain?
So at this stage, we're looking to partner with a few different terrain makers, and I've been talking to them at the moment to identify those that have terrain that really fits our theme, which is essentially a near-future sort of sci-fi scenario. The buildings that you see there, they're from Outlander, so I haven't been able to find the company itself, but they come out of China. And they're fantastic for me because I can simply take them apart, flat pack them when I need to travel to run demo games.
Right.
So, they come together quite nicely to make a pristine city.
Drop Zone Commander, I think. Is that it?
No, they are slightly larger. Some of these are marked as HO scale, some of them as 1 to 100, but they look thematically about the same.
Right.
And I know they do 1 to 144 and 1 to 160 as well, but I haven't seen those ones in person to be able to confirm if they fit the same scale or not.
So Kickstarter-wise, you guys are funded right now, right? Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And how's it going? And how much longer do you have to go? And things are looking good, or we got some new any secrets you can drop about what might be some content coming up?
Yeah, certainly. So we're funded. We've got our first 3 stretch goals down, which unlocked the Wombat, the Jackal scout vehicle, and the Extractor. And as we went through before, the Wombat and the Extractor are both added as freebies to pledges, but you can also grab them as an add-on bonus as well. And particularly if you're pledging at Sector Commander, you get a bit of bonus content in there as well that you can choose what you spend it on. You'll note that the next stretch goal we're going to hit is the Viper, which unlocks a stealth combat tank, which is one of my personal favourites. It's a difficult unit to use at first because it has middle of the road stats, so you really need to focus on using that unit to get the most out of it. But when you do it, it yields some pretty fantastic results. There's a few other vehicles there. There's the cheetah, and I can give you a bit of an exclusive if you like. Let me just pull up. I'm talking to my miniatures designer at the moment, and we're currently designing. So we've got another batch of about 10 different tanks that we're working on just at the moment. So one of them that we're working on, most tanks usually have a single weapon system that they can use, but one that I'm working on at the moment, I'm just trying to bring up the picture for it. It's actually called the bear. So, see if I can figure out how to share a screen now.
If you go over to the left,
yep,
and a bar pops out and you got a screen share.
There we go. All right, so can you see that?
I do not see it.
Okay, one sec.
There, I guess.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so this one's a bit of a strange unit because it has two different weapon systems on it. So obviously stealing a little bit of the motif of, say, the M3 Lee from World War II. This one's got a hull-mounted gun as well as a turret-mounted gun on it. So, yeah, this is an interesting unit because it actually packs two different types of firepower, which means two different ranges, and it's going to affect two different defense systems in two different ways.
Can it target two different units?
No, it can't, unfortunately. The drones are fairly simple and they're being controlled by a single person, so they have to focus on one target. However, it can do sneaky things like, because it has two separate weapon systems, it can do things like double its bonus from, say, a rapid fire order card, so it'll get another 2 firepower dice instead of just 1.
Cool. So one thing I wanted to ask is there like a firing arcs? So I know, like I've seen, I know you can play a move card and you move your guy, and then when it's your turn again or whatever, you can play a shoot card. But does your turret or your front have to be facing the enemy to be able to shoot, or you just have sort of a 360 sight because the turrets spin, or how's that work?
Yeah, so in this game, we've tried to keep it as, in terms of the game's complexity, keep it as simple as possible, but give a whole lot of depth to the gameplay. So things like facings, pivots, all that sort of stuff, we've just kept it very simple. So you simply move from one place to another as long as you can physically fit the vehicle through any gaps. There's no worrying about pivoting or any of that sort of stuff. When it comes to shooting, you do need to rotate, if you can, your turret to face the target. But this is only so that we can ensure that the true line of sight works. I'll just show you the very top of this Rhino here.
Oh, cool.
So you notice just on top there, there's the sensor pod. This sensor pod is present on all the different vehicles on the turret. So on the Elephant, there's same sort of setup there. That's our focal point. If you're going to draw your true line of sight, it always has to come from that point on the vehicle.
Very cool. Well, I think we've gone through, and so one of the other things it seems like you could, in the game Infinity, they call it going Arambow with a unit, and you probably could do that as long as you could keep activating the same tank with the cards, or once once a tank is shot, it only can shoot once a turn, or how's that work?
So each tank can receive up to 3 orders cards. Now you can choose what you want them to be. So it might be that you've got one tank in a fantastic position, it's just going to sit there and blaze away. Another time you might have a tank that redlines in a position and then plays a card like Hull Down to make itself more defensive, and then just sits there and spots for the artillery, for example. There may be turns where you've got a tank that does absolutely nothing because you don't have enough orders cards, or you're simply focusing on another part of the battlefield and getting that one to move.
I really like that. That's a good combination between some of the two systems. So a system where it's an I go, you go, or whatever. But like, in my opinion, one of the problems with Infinity is you pretty much, sometimes you just activate one unit the entire turn. And it seems like it's too much. So this seems like a really good compromise.
Yeah, it's an alternating activation system too. So, for example, if I was playing, one of my wolves was trying to sneak into your back line, I might play a move card, move it into position ready to shoot, but then it'll go over to you to play a different card, and there's a whole range of different things you can do to try and stop me. You could try moving something in the way to block my shot with your own wolf, for example. It has a very good reflective armor against that energy weapon system. You could try shooting it with a very good target, like, for example, the elephant. You could try dropping something like a system crash, where you actually crash the CPU of that wolf, so it's then basically spending the rest of its turn rebooting instead of trying to attack or move to somewhere else that's advantageous.
Interesting. So I was going to kick over to the Kickstarter thing I was looking at. I'm not starting it up here. So it looks like you got 10 days to go?
Yep. So it's only a 3-week Kickstarter. We figured we'd keep it fairly short.
Very nice. And the basic game is, what, 45 pounds, it says, which is about 63 US dollars. I don't know. And then you said there's the extra pledge, which I guess is 60 pounds, and that includes you can spend an extra 24 pounds just on extra tanks and stuff.
Yeah. Plus, with the 60-pound pledge, you also get the extractor as a freebie in there as well.
Okay. Very cool.
We're fairly close to our next stretch goal as well. Once we hit that, the Viper's unlocked, and it's only another 500 pounds before we hit the stretch goal after that. And when we hit that, then there's another freebie that's getting chucked into everyone's set as well, which is the squirrel transport. So yeah, we're planning to keep a few of these things going to make sure that you guys get the maximum value out of the set. Okay.
Very, very cool. I'm looking forward to it. I know you actually have a version, which I looked at last night on the Tabletop Simulator. Is that it?
That's correct, yep. Being in Australia, we don't have a lot of access to the US market or that sort of thing. Our publisher is in the UK, so they've got access to some of that. But I figured if people want to try out the game and they're on the other side of the world, I'm quite happy to boot up Tabletop Simulator and run them through a demo. Likewise, if people want to jump in there, it has all the rules, all the cards, everything in there that you need to play, so you can just jump in with your friends and have a crack.
And it's just a downloadable thing for Tabletop Simulator. I downloaded it. It was real fast. Hopefully you and I can get together and try and run through some of it. I'm not going to try and do it on this live stream, but it looked pretty cool, and I think that's a great way, because some of the more obscure games, it's a great way to help build a following.
Yeah, and this game is one of those ones that's, some games come out with fantastic looking miniatures that people buy and play in other systems. Some games just have a really out there set of artwork. This game is based on its gameplay, and we're hoping that'll bring people back to keep playing. But it does mean that trying to say, hey, play this game, it's really great, is difficult because, well, I'm horribly biased for one thing. But when you've got something like this that you can say, look, you have to spend zero money if you've got a copy of Tabletop Simulator, which I think is only about $20 US, thereabouts.
Right.
Once you've got Tabletop Simulator, just download this free mod, give the game a go. You'll see how it plays. You'll enjoy it, no doubt, and you'll come back and say, look, I really want to put this game on the tabletop and see how it plays there.
I didn't mean to slight you by saying obscure game. I just meant compared to some of the juggernauts in the industry or whatever.
Absolutely, and we know it's a risk at the moment, because this is an entirely new game. It's not based on a TV or a movie or a computer game series or anything like that. This is its own beast, and therefore we don't come with a built-in audience already. And so, yeah, it's always a risk to launch something like that, but we're confident that this is a very good product and it's something that people enjoy enough that they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting. When do you guys imagine that you're going to get the Kickstarter fulfillment phase? So, I mean, you're going to fund now, so in 10 days, I guess you'll fund for sure. What's the next steps?
So, Mark from Word Forge has got a fair bit of pedigree when it comes to running Kickstarters. So he knows his deadlines in and out, and he's quite across this sort of stuff. And we've put a deadline of November in there, and obviously we've padded that with a bit of contingency, so we're hoping we'll be able to deliver even earlier if possible. If people have any concerns whatsoever, they can certainly look up the previous Kickstarters that he's run. So Devil's Run, Hell's Highway, Devil's Run, Route 666, as well as board games like D-Day Dice, which is still yet to fulfill because it's only just finished end of last year, but also games like Cheeks. So yeah, there's lots of games that Word Forge has delivered previously, so people can certainly trust that it will be in place and ready to give the backers everything they ordered.
Great, great. Well, I guess that's the questions I have. Do you have anything you'd like to add or get the word out?
Well, always keen to get the word out, and as I've said, if people are even vaguely interested in getting metal on metal sort of action going on there, and tanks driving around and shooting each other up, jump on Tabletop Simulator, have a look. Feel free to have a look at the 5-minute explainer videos on our Kickstarter page. If you've got any questions, hit me up. I'm very happy to answer questions any time of day or night. And in fact, for your wonderful listeners over in the US there, they'll probably find their questions answered overnight by the magical fairy from Australia, and they'll wake up to some answers in the morning.
All right. So thanks for joining me this morning. And thanks to everybody for listening. I hope you guys go ahead and take a look at this Kickstarter. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. And we will talk to you next time. Thanks, Chris, for joining.
Thanks for having me on.
I'm going to stop here.